Thanks everybody here also for joining and for organizing. Are we on?
The recording is going.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone. My name is Dr. van den Berg. I'm the Global Director for the Cities Program of World Resources Institute. And I'm very happy to be chairing this session today. The session Resilience Knows No Boundaries, Water Resilience from Basins to Cities at the World Water Week. Very important opportunity today to discuss finance and emerging initiatives that help to kind of implement urban resilience and scale urban resilience in Africa. I'm looking forward to a session in which we have a framing opening remarks. I'm very happy that we have with us Honorable Deputy Minister of Coordinated Governments and Traditional Affairs of South Africa. Welcome very much, Honorable Thambine Karimeng. It's great that you're here. And without further ado, I actually want to give you the floor to kind of set up the stage for us to kind of further discuss over the next 1.5 hours of this session. So thank you for joining. Honorable Deputy Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible and people can see me. A very warm morning to all of us, but importantly, to the World Resource Institute, which has put us up together with the partners, the Resilient Cities Network as well, WaterAid and Arup, to make sure that we put discussions on how do we create water resilience from basins to cities. I love the theme, resilience knows no boundaries. Before you create the basins, you need to think at how best the lines, the cities, and the descriptions could be made from one area to another area. Today, we talk about 2.5 billion people globally who lack access to safe, affordable, and adequate water. The supply in most areas of the world are predicted to reach about 3.5 billion in year 2025. And this is just a resounding 86 months from where we are sitting today. So in essence, 70% of the world will already be dealing with the effects of climate change, which also bring another spanner into how do we create resilient cities, further from creating basins, but also to creating response to emergencies, particularly under times of acute and urgent weathers in Africa and the urbanizing continents that we all continue to see. About 950 million people will live in Africa by 2050, and an additional number of vulnerabilities to climate impacts will also be increasing. So 300% increase in water demand by 2030 alone is what this session and many others to follow needs to face and discuss. But to bring even the discussion further would be to look into the financing elements of ensuring that we all and all citizens receive or are part of the urban water resilience strategy, but also are part of the water resilience implementation, are part of the water resilience response rates in all the areas. So for example, the African Water Cities Adaptation Fund and the Resilient Community Impact Funds are potential game changers, which we all need to unpack as countries, transform them and ensure that they are climate ready and climate user friendly for all water risks, to ensure that investable opportunities are achieved and issues are well managed. Water scarcities versus flooding is also another critical risk factor, both for human life, environmental health, business and industries in cities. This forces us to plan together beyond boundaries to make sure that your neighbor is my neighbor, your neighbor is my neighbor as well, as we plan together, because indeed, disaster also knows no boundaries. A great example will be how a cooperation between South Africa and Lesotho is in terms of sharing of the water, potable water for human consumption, But beyond that, it will be about dealing with the climate change of snowy mountains, hectic weather conditions, which comes from the Lesotho Mountains. You look into our east, our partners in Zimbabwe, in Mozambique rather, with the rainy belt that they have after every 2 to 3 years, to make sure that we plan with them, we plan together for evacuation, but also even for readiness and prevention. An element of financing will go with job creation, not only for ourselves, but also for the world. For example, 29 million city residents. If such plans are articulated to the T, about 64,000 jobs could be created, and we could be able to save over 137 million square cubic meters for water. And you will also hear that we need to walk into our Resilient Water Accelerator and other initiatives to ensure that our approach and the emerging strategies identify innovative projects to address the gaps in financing of our cities. And finally, I would want to touch possibly on the political awakening and leadership preparedness from our countries to make sure that our cities have a voice, not only in financing, in planning, in implementation, and in prevention of disasters. How do we do that? By ensure a strategic and day-to-day well-defined partnership with key stakeholders in climate change who are always readily available to bring in value, immense value, in fact, to support all the efforts that government has, which will also be incorporating inputs from business and corporates, which in some instances, most of them, they are willing to even fund the programs. So our collaboration will also assist in ensuring that we build a whole new societal approach that is essential in the agenda, but also in terms of the scaling up of delivery and also a climate sensitive plan for all our countries. This, for me, will be what the key imperatives, as I warmly welcome all of you into the deliberations of this hour to ensure that we are together for the developmental and a different world. Thank you very much. You are all welcomed.
Thank you so much, Honorable Deputy Minister Tamina Kadimeng from the Department of Coordinated Government's Traditional Affairs of South Africa. Setting the stage, 300% increase in water demand, water scarcity versus flooding, disasters knows no boundaries, and job creation, the opportunity to create jobs, and a role for cities. Thank you very much for framing. We're now moving to the next segment in which we hear from different initiatives and representatives of the organization that you see here on the logos represented on the slide, on how these initiatives are actually helping cities to identify, finance, and finance innovative solutions for urban water resilience in Africa. And first, I want to give the floor to Louise Ellis from Arup on the city water resilience approach. The floor is yours if you can frame the initiative in 3 minutes maximum. Go ahead.
Thank you, Roger. The city water resilience approach responds to a demand for innovative tools that help cities build water resilience at the urban scale. The tool is there to support cities, crucially, to grow their capacity to provide high quality water and wastewater services for all residents, and then also to protect them from water related hazards. The City Water Resilience approach was developed through fieldwork with 5 cities around the world, as well as partnerships with subject matter experts from the Rockefeller Foundation, the World Bank, CWRA, the Resilient Cities Network, the World Resources Institute, the Resilient Shift, and the University of Massachusetts Amherst. The tool is a 5-step approach, and it's inclusive, bringing together different perspectives from water and city stakeholders to encourage collective action. Crucially, we wanted it to be holistic, so considering elements such as governance and financial resilience, as well as infrastructure resilience. It also covers the entire catchment from source to sea. Finally, it's crucially that it's action oriented, so it encourages the ownership, development and progression of actions. What we really didn't want with the city water resilience approach is something that developed a strategy that then sat on a shelf. It needs to be a live, living action plan that can be owned and adopted by a city. The 5-step process takes urban and water stakeholders through 5 steps. Firstly, bringing together a diverse group of stakeholders to collectively understand their water system. And that includes the natural and man-made assets, as well as their governance arrangements and the shocks and stresses that they face. Then diagnose their water resilience vulnerabilities using a framework of qualitative and quantitative indicators. And then use that information, so that diagnosis, as well as the understanding of the system, to develop a collective action plan to improve urban water resilience. And that action plan is based on an evaluation of the root cause of resilience issues, as well as the anticipated benefits and costs of activities. And crucially, it identifies an owner and supporting organisations for each of the actions, so that there is ownership moving through into implementation. The actions aren't just infrastructure interventions, they range from building knowledge and capacity, policy and governance interventions, as well as data and information improvements. The city water resilience approach has been adapted for lots of different capacities and opportunities, partly as a function of the situation. As it's been developed and adapted, we experienced the COVID-19 pandemic. And so we've developed, alongside in-person approach, also a remote, hybrid and partnering implementation approach, so that it can be implemented in lots of different contexts. Additionally, we recognise that not all cities have the capacity to work with an extensive framework. And so we've developed 4 levels of the framework to reflect those different city capacities. And these levels start with the essential provision of WASH, of water and sanitation and hygiene, where a city needs to be able to cope with recent urban growth and current demand. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have a regenerative level, which uses all of the original kind of sub-goals, and the city is aspiring to use new and innovative technologies and take a holistic approach to evaluating the urban system. The city water resilience approach has now been implemented in 15 cities across North America, Europe, the Middle East and Africa. It's been used in 8 cities in Africa, 6 as part of the Urban Water Resilience Initiative. That's Addis Ababa, Kigali, Johannesburg, Diadawa, Muzanze and Gaburha, as well as also used in Abuja and Cape Town, where the action plan has been ratified as part of the Capital Improvement Plan for Water. What we see from the city water resilience approach is that crucially, having that sound water resilience plan is the first step on the journey. And across Africa, it will be the first step on the journey to improving resilience for 1.2 billion people. Thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you very much, Louise. Very much appreciate a live, living action plan. That's great. And collectively understand the water system. Thank you very much for presenting on the city water resilience approach. Over to Smita Rawood, my dear colleague from World Resources Institute, who will present the Africa Cities Water Adaptation Fund, ACWA. Over to you, Smita.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you all for the opportunity to present on the work we are doing on the ACWA Fund. To begin, let me state the rationale for the fund. As many of you know, the water sector is woefully underfunded. Globally, there is 200 to 400 billion annual gap in funding water investments in low and middle income countries. With growing urbanization, these challenges are nowhere more apparent than in cities. For example, 2/3 of Africa's cities are expected to face extreme climate risks and water-related shocks, impacting the health and productivity of millions. There is, in sub-Saharan Africa alone, there is an additional $66 billion required to support water and sanitation infrastructure investments, and an additional $9 to $14 billion required annually to secure the water sources. But only 1% of the $100 billion in private investments is going towards the water sector. So there is an urgent need to leverage more private finance while better utilizing and coordinating public sector funds, including climate and development aid, to increase investments in water resilience as cities are facing the growing challenges of water availability, water insecurity due to longer droughts, frequent flooding, and greater storm events. This is the reason why the ACWA Fund is being set up. The ACWA Fund it's a blended finance instrument that blends grants and concessional loans from donors, bilateral agencies, and development finance institutions with city and national owned funds to leverage more private sector investment from commercial lenders and impact investors to meet this urgently needed gap in water resilience in African cities. It aims to deliver $222 million in TA grants in 100 cities by 2032 to catalyze $288 million in capital for direct investment in priority water resilience projects in 100 cities by 2032, while leveraging $5 billion in additional investment. The fund, as the diagram on the left shows here on the screen, provides three streams of funding. First is grants to develop urban water resilience action plans using tools like the city water resilience approach to develop an integrated and a portfolio-based strategy. And as Luis pointed out earlier, this work is already being implemented in 6 cities in Africa through a €3 million grant by the German Federation Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. The second stream of funding, as the diagram shows, aims to provide repayable grants for project preparation once the action plans are developed. And then the third stream of funding, once the projects are prepared, aims to provide direct investment in the form of equity and subordinated debt to implement those projects in cities. Additionally, through a unique kind of investment menu approach, the fund aims to offer a set of priority pre-structured investment opportunities with defined returns and payback periods that can be scaled up rapidly for investment across 100 cities. The fund is actually currently actively brokering partnerships with more downstream funders as well to provide the full life cycle support for water resilience projects. This includes coordination with the Development Bank of South Africa, DBSA, with partners like the Resilient Cities Impact Fund, with Water Unite, the Africa Investment Program, and many other such funders who provide funding at different stages of project development. Through this approach, what we aim to do is we aim to rationalize financing for water, urban development, and climate resilience that is currently highly fragmented by providing a coordinated, blended, and pooled funding model. And particularly, the ACWA Fund also takes a strategic approach to funding certain set of priority projects which are currently underfunded by existing funding instruments that are available. So this includes small to medium scale investments that are currently not being funded by other investment mechanisms that are available. It also aims to prioritize projects that have low capital needs but high resilience benefits. And then it also aims to mainstream project types which are emerging solutions. For example, nature-based solutions for wastewater treatment, for flood risk protection, and watershed management. So these are the kinds, sorry, Roger.
No, go ahead, please wrap up.
Thank you. I will wrap up soon. Thank you for the notification on the time. So I think, as you see, the goal of the fund is to provide an instrument that will help fill the gap in the current funding and financing landscape to really catalyze the development of and implementation of emerging solutions in the coming decade. And please do reach out if you would like to know more. We welcome a group of partners to support this fund. And thank you, Roger. Back to you.
Thanks, Smita, for kind of laying this out. I want to move to the next initiative presented by Katrin Brubach from Resilient Cities Network on the Resilience Community Impact Fund. The floor is yours. Go ahead.
Good morning, and thank you, Roger, for having me today. I'm very excited to introduce you today to our very own Resilient Community Impact Funds. So the Resilient Community Impact Funds is an emerging funding platform that brings together cities and public and private partners that are committed to secure a resilient and sustainable future to all who live in cities and the regions cities impact. We designed and set up the RCI-Funds to provide our very own member cities with the connections and resources that help them to bring their resilience plans into implementation. The RCI-Funds platform is the first of its kind that focuses specifically on building holistic resilience that we believe will generate measurable reductions in vulnerability around the world. It leverages funding from local and global institutions while engaging city programs and budgets to invest with a return on what we call resilience value. This means that it will fund projects that are developed for specific resilience outcomes. It is designed to be flexible and provide catalytic grant funding for projects from multiple donors. Under the platform, the sub-funds, which you can see on the screen at the moment, are aligned with our priority themes and programs and can also be geographically specific. The initial phase of fundraising and funds disbursement will focus on resilience projects prioritized by our cities, as well as projects identified through our programmatic work along our thematic action areas, water resilience being one of the core priorities. We want to raise funds for the RCI funds targeting a minimum fund size of $10 million over the next 2 years. Funding can support projects preparation, innovative pilots, small to medium scale projects. It can also be used by cities to leverage and layer funding for larger projects they are aiming for. The RCI funds is not a sector fund, so it's not a water fund, but a funding platform for cities to advance their resilience building efforts. We want to link the RCI fund to the Urban Water Resilience Initiative, and you heard from Smita and Louise about two very essential parts of that initial initiative we have been working on with them for more than 2 years now. We have brought together under this initiative the ingredients of the Chief Resilience Officer and the city teams with the tools you heard about, like the CWRA, cross-sectoral expertise to work on the ground. And we have developed action plans that contain very own initiatives that are ready for funding. These projects who now need funding to be further developed and implemented and scaled, we want to connect to the RCI Funds platform. We are ready to set up the Water Resilience Subfund that will support small innovative resilience projects identified in these very own action plans. We want you to join us in using a holistic lens to help stimulate and develop holistic resilience projects and break our urban and water silos. So we don't want us to talk about water funding or resilience funding. We want to do that holistically together. As a water and sanitation engineer, the water sector has been my home for more than 20 years now. And I love cities, and I also live in a city, and I know and have seen it with my work with cities, that cities can be the game changers that will be able to bring all the local and regional actors together to build water resilience globally. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katrin. Cities can be the game changer and breaking the silos. I think it's great to also hear you speak about the connectivity, which we will discuss later on in the panel. First, I want to give the floor to Jonathan Farr from WaterAid, who will kind of present the Resilient Water Accelerator, RWA. Jonathan, floor is yours.
Thanks so much for here, and thanks very much to WRI for organising this event. It's a pleasure to be here today. And just to introduce myself, I'm Jonathan Farr, and I work for WaterAid, and I'm leading the work of the Resilient Water Accelerator. And it's not been stated, and it doesn't need to be stated on this call because we've got so many amazing experts here. But we're facing multiple overlapping water crises, and we know that whatever we're doing, we're all doing great work. We're not doing things quickly enough, things are not improving quickly enough, and money is just not getting where it needs to get to. And like the schemes that have been outlined already, the ACWA scheme and the CWRA, we are working out, doing things differently means going beyond our individual organizational boundaries. That's why I love the title we've got for this session, because WaterAid, no matter how good we do our programs, it's not going to solve the problem. And that is one of the reasons why we've working with a coalition. I stress very much, although it's an initiative that's been founded by WaterAid, it's very much a coalition. We've got WRI, I'm pleased to say, and Arup and Global Water Partnership and the African Development Bank all working on the Resilient Water Accelerator. The coalition has to be heart of this approach, because we have to bring our different skills and techniques and approaches to these overlapping water crises, whether it's quite a crisis of water resources, of access to water, of ecosystems, or of course some of the really terrifying impacts of climate change that are hitting the headlines every day. And so, what can we do about it? Well, the Resilient Water Accelerator aims to put massive emphasis in 3 areas. And the first emphasis we're putting on is the most vulnerable communities. And that falls largely into 2 camps. There's obviously the most vulnerable people who don't have access to wash, people living very much on the margins of society, who are already struggling to cope. They're living in crisis. And then of course there's those communities, especially for example coastal communities, who are facing impacts on their water resources, sea level rise, low access, ecosystem degradation. We need to, those people are currently at the back of the queue for climate finance, but they need to be at the front of the queue. That if climate finance is for anything, it should be to help them. So we, through this coalition we're building, through the Resilient Water Accelerator, want to bring all this global expertise we have directly to help them, and use these, secure a few millions in program design to unlock billions of investment we need to see to completely change the story on water security. So that brings me on to the second area, which is about convergence, and recognizing it's very easy for me to sit here and say, oh, well, let's just work on water resources and wash and ecosystem together. But actually, whilst climate change is a global problem, its impacts are very local and very specific, and therefore we need to get people on the ground, and work with communities who understand their situation to build solutions together. And so we need to invest in that. We need to make sure people have the time and the expertise and the data to do that. And so that brings me to that last point, which is, of course, that data analysis is currently not available. We need to absolutely upscale the capacity and the ability and the time to produce that ground level analysis, that data, not just climate data or water data. Water connects everything, so we need to really understand the context we're working in. And also, this is not just about solving these intractable climate problems, it's also the sort of information that we need to bring in investment, because one of the main barriers to investment is just a lack of understanding the context. How can you have confidence in a big investment where you don't know what's happening on the ground? And so again, that's this huge added value from this small amount of work, and that's what we hope the Resilient Water Accelerator can do to unlock this. So we're about to start working coastal Bangladesh, which is one of the areas facing these many problems, and we're also about to start work with Arup in Lagos, hopefully, which is another area where, again, there's many, on top of the water problems, there's a number of other different challenges and pressures which make it a particularly exciting place to work. And so I'd invite anyone interested in more detail to get in touch, and I look forward to hearing about everyone else's approach to these challenges today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, for laying this out so comprehensively within 3 minutes or a little more. So we have 4 to 5 minutes to discuss as a panel, a little less than we anticipated. We run over a little bit. I want to ask the presenters now, before we move to our city representatives, but first I want to ask the presenters to kind of briefly respond to the question what the opportunities are for these initiatives to collaborate with each other and partner. And let's kind of stick to the order that we've just had. So Louise, maybe you can first address it after Smith, and then Smita, Katrin, and Jonathan. Please stay brief. Louise,
thank you, Radier. The City Water Resilience Approach is open source, so it's available for anybody to use. It's been used across several programs by cities as well as utilities, so it's had kind of different leadership. It's a tried and tested methodology, and it enables this rapid development of intervention or plans of interventions. And I think that's really crucial because these action plans provide investment-ready schemes for funds like RCI, the Resilient Water Accelerator, and the ACWA fund to invest in. As well as that, I just flag one advantage, which is that it's intended to be locally led. So it's intended to be led by the city or the utility, and that's really crucial for moving into that implementation phase. Thanks, Roger.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Smita. Where do you see collaboration and the connection between the initiatives?
Well, thank you, Roger. And as has been highlighted by all the other speakers, we know for the ACWA fund to really be absorbed and the funding from the ACWA fund to be really absorbed in cities, we need a massive scale of capacity building and knowledge building and skill development that is required to advance projects towards implementation. So one of the things the ACWA fund is doing is it's simultaneously setting up an ACWA platform, a platform of experts and researchers and practitioners from across Africa who will be able to support in those capacity building efforts to really prepare projects, to support cities in preparing the projects, to advocate for more resilience investment, and to advance projects to a citywide implementation approach. So I think the ACWA platform, and colleagues can share links to what the ACWA platform is in the chat. This ACWA platform is a growing coalition of currently of 22 organizations, but we aim to scale it to 40 by COP27, which is in Africa. And our goal is to use this as a capacity building mechanism to really be able to deliver the projects in Africa. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you very much, Smita, for highlighting this. Katrin, over to you. Connectivity and collaboration between these initiatives.
I think it's actually not so complicated, or maybe I'm too naive, but at the end, if we want to change the world and if we want to build water resilience globally, we need cities, and we need to connect cities into that. And I think the big question is, how do we make sure that cities are actually accessing these initiatives, and how can we connect cities into that? And I think this is a role we as a network can play in coming in and joining the work that everybody is trying to advance on the ground in cities, because cities play this key role in them having the power to change. And on the other hand, they need to become these problem solvers. So they need to understand what they need to change, and they need to have access to the funding and financing and the expertise while they grow and build the capacity to actually solve these problems which they face, but also the problems they actually produce. Because a lot of the things we are talking about only exist because cities are still lacking capacity to address and provide best services to their citizens.
Thank you very much, Katrin. Jonathan, how to better connect, collaborate, and make more of the sum of the parts?
I mean, it is very much the big challenge, but in the same way, I mean, I think it's something that has emerged naturally because we realized that there's no one organization or one initiative that can solve all these issues. And I think almost certainly in terms of the Resilient Water Accelerator, but also some of the initiatives that we're talking about today, it's almost like a sort of nested doll approach, whereby WaterAid is really just a collection of different programs, and as a federation within that we have our consortium, and then within that we're reaching out to other networks beyond the water sector. We're working with the Sustainable Markets Initiative to bring in that sort of financial expertise. We're reaching out through sort of looking at talking to the development organizations to recognize that, of course, water brings everything together. So I think if you don't collaborate, then you fail very hard. And therefore, it is something which is, we can either learn it the long way around, or we can try and facilitate as best we can. And I think the next challenge is to enable that to happen on the ground, not just to wait for it to happen.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Thanks for the presenters in this session of the initiatives and this kind of brief discussion. And really looking forward, I mean, this session is organized by this organization, and really looking forward to further collaborate to bring scale to this kind of pressing, urgent issue. I now have the honor to chair the next session and to hear from the cities what actually are their needs and what are the gaps in funding and financing. And I'm very, very happy and honored that we have Lordship Mayor Rubingiza, Mayor of Kigali City, with us. Thank you very much for joining. very happy that Michael Webster, the Executive Director, Water and Sanitation of the City of Cape Town, is here. Welcome to the session. Welcome to the Water Week. Welcome to this important discussion on water and cities. And I want to ask you the first question. And what value do you see in developing resilience-focused planning in the water sector? And how has it helped you to define actions and get funding and financing in place for implementation? The floor is yours, Honorable Lordship Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rogi, and all participants. And also, I'm so glad to be part of this session. You know, the city of Kigali is well known as a resilient city. Now we are also bringing in the water component. We have long prioritized climate change resilience. We've been working with specific partners, including, of course, the Kigali office, CWRA. And as far as the city is concerned, of course, you understand that mainstreaming resilience into our integrated development strategy has also been a key element that was considered in our actions, and also included it in our Kigali master plan for the coming years up to 2050, because we are so much considering this as well. Again, I want to say that resilience mainstreaming into some key, city plans, and also the strategies. Not only we see the city not only as a capital city, but also we see it as an integrated city that is located in the center of the country, whereby we can also bring some other, neighboring districts in the other, provinces. But this has really helped to guide the city in its growth while helping decision makers to plan ahead for climate shocks that we can face, but also how we can also anticipate. Kigali again has been committing to building what I could call a water resilient city plan. And we are, as I said, we are now working to really ensure that in our urban development and also planning decisions that we take, we align with the natural water flows and also that can help, of course, to sustain water resources and quality. We again, as a city, we recognize that many of our water stresses and risks that we face can definitely be avoided through holistic and integrated planning, both within the city itself, but also considering the boundaries, but also the watersheds that the city is dependent on. Don't again, forget that we are known as a country of 1,000 hills. You understand that we need to consider also the geographic location. We need to consider the water basin. We need to consider all those in our planning in a way that they really definitely the watersheds can also be considered in whatever we do. Also, we through different works that we undertaking plans, for instance, as part of the urban water resilience initiatives that we undertook as a city, taking actually the stock of our key needs to build water resilience. And this has helped actually recently when we launched it during the Commonwealth meeting that we hosted. We had a chance to host as a city. So there's a profile, or the resilience profile and action plan with regard to our water resilience initiative. This has been considered and it was launched. It was really a very privileged because we also gathered different ideas of experts on how this can be done smartly and much better. So the benefit of resilience focusing has been focusing in planning, but also I want to mention that it actually establishes a basis for coordination as a city that has already identified the priority actions, that has already brought on board different stakeholders that has different expertise, including academia as well, and also what is really needed for us to deliver those, to be able to deliver against those actions. This has been put in place, and we can now talk about implementation phases. So we are ready for that. We are now mobilizing, actually trying to mobilize resources and see how we can really put in place those interventions and solutions. As I conclude, I want to mention that the city again developed from a consultative and participatory process, the city resilience profile and the action plan developed for Kigali City that has laid out a roadmap for identifying which specific actions are most critical and which can also solve specific actions, a widest range of issues that we are facing. We have again, as I said, identified which stakeholders and partners are really critical to specific actions that we need to implement. And most critically, the city action plan lays the foundation for approaching financing partners with bankable projects that we have on the table. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor Rubingiza, for kind of laying out how kind of resilience is really integrated in your kind of planning approaches on the master plan of Kigali. Thank you. Before we go to Michael Webster, I just want to thank Honorable Deputy Minister Thambile Kadiman from the Department of Coordinated Governance and Traditional Affairs of South Africa. Thanks for setting the stage. Thanks for being with us. And thanks for joining this session. Very much appreciated. Michael Webster, Executive Director, Water and Sanitation, City of Cape Town. How do you value kind of the resilience-focused approach in planning the water sector, and how has it helped you to define actions and funding towards implementation? Really happy to learn from your experience.
Greetings, Mr. Van der Berg, and greetings from Cape Town, the southern tip of Africa, a few thousand kilometers south of Kigali. And greetings to you, Lord Mayor of Kigali. Great to make your acquaintance.
Yes.
My name is Mike Webster. I'm the Executive Director of Water and Sanitation within the City of Cape Town, which is the municipal government. So I have administrative authority over the Water and Sanitation department, meeting the service delivery needs for our about 5 million customers in Cape Town. Cape Town is a fantastic case study in this resilience approach, primarily because of the recent drought that we became infamous for around 2014, 2018, where we nearly reached what was termed day zero, where the city almost ran out of water. And I think it really caused shockwaves throughout the city, throughout the country, and throughout the world, that a city with this relative capacity can actually run out of water and unable to provide basic services to our citizens. So like the rest of Africa, I was actually involved in a study looking at the 30 biggest cities in Africa, including Kigali and Cape Town. Our demand is significantly increasing, and that's due to population growth, due to urbanization, due to economic growth, and estimated across the continent to increase by about threefold over the next few decades. And at the same time, our supply is shrinking because of climate change, rainfall declines, but also water quality impacts. And that's both in the urban sector, which I work directly with, but also because of competing needs in agriculture, similar to what the Lord Mayor described in Kigali. We need that water to make food. We share the same water sources, and we're all competing for that shrinking supply. So in Cape Town, over the 2014 to 2018 period, we experienced a 1 in 590 year drought. So an unprecedented drought that essentially showed us that our reliance on dam water, on rainfall fed water was a major vulnerability for the city. 98% of our supply comes from rainwater, and that rainwater is expected to decline over the next few decades. We looked very closely at Perth in Australia as a comparator city because of the weather patterns in Perth and how cold fronts, when they reach landfall in Perth, Australia, were pushed away because of El Nino and El Nina, causing a reduction in Perth of about 80% of their runoff into their dams. We've experienced something similar, and our projections are in the next decades that will reduce our rainfall by 20 to 30% over the coming decades. What we don't know is whether that will be a gradual change or a step change. And essentially, we need to plan for the worst and hope for the best. So our strategy was primarily during the drought, dramatically reducing our demand. Our demand is on average about 1,000 megaliters a day. This is for a piped water supply to our 5 million residents. During the drought, we reduced that to under 500 megaliters a day. So we reduced it by over 50% through multiple demand management measures. Traditional measures in leak detection, in metering, in pipe replacement, but also significant tariffs, including punitive drought tariffs and a big communication campaign, but primarily because of this partnership between the municipal government, the local government, which I work for, and each citizen and each company to come to the table to reduce their water. Coming out of the drought, our strategy is all around water resilience. And on the water resilience side within the city, we've identified 3 main areas of focus. The first is to keep this water-wise use, we call it, keeping our per capita use at around 190 liters per capita per day or less through those measures we used in the drought, but also keeping our revenue significantly there so that we can finance our OPEX. The second is to build 300 megaliters a day additional capacity outside of rainwater. So that is using our aquifers, 3 big aquifers in the city. Reused water, we are implementing a direct potable reuse scheme of 70 megaliters a day, scalable up to 100. Desalinated water, we put in temporary desalinated plants during the drought, and now we're building a permanent desalination plant. It's expensive, but it is necessary. And better management of our catchments. So there's another presentation later on today around invasive alien species clearance within our catchment through our water fund that we helped establish. And this is actually our cheapest source of water to ensure that our catchment yields as much as we can. So when it comes to the resilience approach, for us, it's been a way of coordinating, similar to what the Lord Mayor said in Kigali, of bringing the political, the administrative, and the society together, of looking at integrated planning and at identifying financing and engineering and other social engineering aspects into that resilience approach.
Thank you very much. This is exciting to hear. It's very it's a dark future, looking at a reduction of rainfall, as you kind of spelled out, what we see happening in Perth and what we see happening in Cape Town, 20 to 30% you mentioned. But you also mentioned the opportunities of diversification, that holistic approach, and the better management of catchment. So thanks a lot for kind of highlighting this, also making the connection to what Lordship Mayor Rwingiza of Kigali City just said. We have a few minutes for a second question, so I want to ask you to be a little bit more concise as anticipated, to reflect on the earlier initiatives that you have been seeing that were presented, and how these initiatives kind of put further focus and add value to secure funding and implementation. And Lordship Mayor, you already kind of referred a little bit in your kind of first response, but maybe you can help us to connect the dots. Over to you.
Thank you once again, Logi. Well, I will be just precise and brief as requested. Now, there are several initiatives, of course. So some of them I had also Jonathan mentioning some of them. Basically, we'll be reflecting on the opportunities that out there concerning the funding. Because now, as myself and Michael saying, we've got initiatives, we've got solutions, we've put things on the table, we've got actions, we've got set them. Now we need to move to the next phase of implementing. So, yes, how can these initiatives further can focus and add value to what we are doing? I want to come back to what Kigali has as a need. We have an urgent financing gap that we should actually fix to make sure that our dream becomes reality as we protect our beautiful city, as we protect our environment. Now, where is funding needed now? I want to list a few of them. Number one is, of course, for the solid waste management and wastewater management, for the maintenance and building sanitation infrastructure, for funding relocating actually some residents out of the high-risk zones. As I said, our cities in 1,000 hills with close to 6 and 7% slope. So you understand that some people can be located in high-risk zones. So we need to locate them, protect the environment, greening, and also put them in a very decent environment as we protect the water stream and also the environment. We need to be ready for disaster, a kind of disaster recovery and response timely as well. Mobilizing the community with us for them to be participating in those initiatives to improve resilience, capacity and awareness, the training where need be, just for the basics. So I can name a lot. Now, with limited financing, you understand that there is a demand, and it is a bit challenging actually for the city to develop all the bankable projects that we have. The good thing is that we've got now the leaders with us, the central government with us. They have understood, they're supporting, they make sure that in every budget at least they put something for us, but our very ambitious plan is still there. So, and again, using the city water resilience approach, diverse groups were consulted, as I said, and we have actually come up with the current challenges within the Kigali city as the lack of available funding due to financing gaps, due to COVID shocks, and so on and so forth, which make the efficiency, the timeliness, and the accessibility of the new project program and also a bit challenging. However, there is that hope, because when you look at all those initiatives that have been highlighted, be it the ACWA fund, be it the RCI fund, be it the resilience water, accelerator, and so on and so forth. So we believe that we are so much excited actually to work with the partners and benefit from the services of the funding solutions. I can say that, for instance, the ACWA fund and some other similar initiatives that we can tap in and be able to move forward. The support that the fund provides to different cities throughout the life cycle of a project definitely ensure the best possible outcome, especially when you have a dedicated team on board when we have also the support from the community and also the leadership, I think we can be able to deliver and move forward and have what we need to do in place. For us, yes, to attract the best financing, I think we need I would say the support of these initiatives in making the most compelling case for investment. The bankable project, the best really to be able to attract investment. The priority for us in the city of Kigali now is to move forward into actions. As I said, I think time has come to stop coming up with the nice documents. I think we have them now. I think the moment is now for us to move forward for actions. And we have worked with the different partners to identify the intervention areas. This has been done, and we look forward now to the presented initiatives coming to fruitful, solutions like connecting the city with the grants and the capital for implementation. And this would really appreciate that can come through as soon as we can. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this kind of laying out the life cycle of project and how we literally make use of the kind of connectivity between the different initiatives presented. Clearly, the gap of finance is there, and I think the combined initiatives can help to kind of sort and move from kind of planning to implementation. Michael, over to you with the same question. And I see we're running a bit over time of this segment, so again, let us try to be concise, but we're all excited about to hear from you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Van der Brink. So I think similar to the Lord Mayor from Kigali, Cape Town welcomes working with any of these initiatives, with any of these funds. They can all bring value in their own ways. We already have worked with the city water resilience approach, the Arup group, and that was very helpful in helping us formulate our strategy. We welcome any of the other three and this type of approach. Let me say a few things that may be relevant to this discussion. Firstly, on the financing. So our capital needs are extensive, no doubt. We've got a 10-year capital program in my directorate of about $3 billion. So it's massive, close to 300 million per year, every year. Of that, the bulk is actually in wastewater treatment upgrades, but a significant amount is on our bulk water and our articulation as well. That said, our OPEX cost, our operating cost for the 5,000 staff we have in our directorate and chemicals and electricity is $500 million per year. So, almost double the CapEx cost. And I say that because I do see a key partnership in this space where you can get external financing. We're going to be picking up the tab on the operating cost, and the future water sources, particularly these non-surface water sources, are all a lot more expensive than the surface water sources. And that's the nature of any urban development. You do develop the cheapest sources first and the more expensive sources later. We at an inflection point now where the sources I mentioned, the groundwater, the reuse, the desal, are all significantly orders of magnitude sometimes more expensive than our current sources. And we're going to have to finance those through our own tariffs, which is what we currently do. Second point is I think outsiders can help within different tiers of government. I work at the local government. We're responsible for water and sanitation, but there is a national mandate for certain water resource development, and assisting in those relationships by providing, some of the intergovernmental partnership can really be useful for each of the parties to come to the table. The third is I do believe, and I think everyone in the call would as well, that it needs to be led by the public sector. You need to see what's there, what is the priority, what room for maneuver there is between the political, the administrative, and all of the others, and work from that base to say, what is the investment that can be supported in this space. Fourth, in my experience within the city, a lot can be done through management improvements, through leadership improvements, through technical assistance prior to big investments. We have a lot of expertise as it is. Some of it works in a certain way, but by coming with an external financing, a lot of the value is not necessarily only in the finance itself, but in being able to prioritize it, in being able to projectize it, using procurement methods that may be more efficient. Our supply chain management policies are really constraining. Getting in external financing can help unlock international expertise in a way that we struggle to do. So lastly, just, the partnership framing can be seen as a bit tired, and because, it's motherhood and apple pie, everyone wants to be partners. But I really do feel that it is one of the key elements of, and I think Katrina or someone mentioned it earlier, unlocking this dynamic between cities and water, between government and the public, between different tiers of government, between outside partners like yourselves and ourselves. How do we creatively find those spaces in formal agreements, in informal agreements, in approaches, as well as in actual, dollars and cents that can oil those kind of relationships? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael Webster. Thank you, Lordship Mayor of the City of Kigali, for extremely articulate ways of kind of framing the challenge, how you work on it, gloomy futures ahead, and at the same time, we are optimists. We see the connectivity between what is being presented and the opportunity to partner, to scale, and to see investment coming to the project priorities. Thanks a lot for being here. Very much appreciated. Very good to hear from the city. Without further ado, I want to move over to Leslie Porries, who's going to moderate the next part of this session, who is with the Global Water Partnership and oversees the Global Water Leadership. Over to you, Leslie.
Hi, yes, and I would also like to thank the organizers for inviting me to participate. It's been a rich conversation so far, and just to sort of summarize where we've been, we've heard about 4 different really interesting initiatives that are all focusing on mobilizing finance and providing support to urban water, to water programs in urban cities across Africa. And from there, we then got to hear from leadership within a couple of these cities to really understand what the demand is, what is really the need. So now we're sort of rounding this out and looking at some of the different financing opportunities and providers here. So I could say a lot more in terms of introducing my 2 speakers, but in presence for respective time, I want to sort of keep it a little bit brief, focus on their remarks. First, first to speak with us is Gregory Renand. He's the head of Zurich Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Zurich Insurance. And he's had a rich, storied career across Zurich, as well as with PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then I'll move on to, we'll also be hearing from what to many of us is a very familiar face in the, for those of us who've been at Stockholm for a while, and that's Mr. Oswald Chanda. He is the Director of Water Development and Sanitation for the African Development Bank. And he comes to us with a rich variety of experience from within the African Development Bank sector. But what some of us might not also know is that even before joining the African Development Bank, he was the director of Zambia's autonomous water utility regulatory agency. So he also comes from that rich utility practitioner side. So it's a really great balance of perspectives. It's a pleasure to be able to speak with both of you today. So the first question that I'd like to pose to both of you is, what are, from Zurich Foundation and also from the African Development Bank, what are your priorities for investing in water resilience, and why? Gregory, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Leslie, and hello, everybody, and also a big thanks to all the previous speakers for the wonderful insights and comments shared. Since 2013, the Zurich Foundation has been investing to build community resilience to flooding, right? The focus from the onset has been on helping communities we need to get ahead of the disaster, right? Building pre-event flood resilience to reduce the potential impact of floods for flood-prone communities. So our focus on prevention and resilience is at the center of what we do and why we're here and why we invest into projects. Indeed, our research has shown that every dollar invested in pre-event resilience building communities can save, on average, $5 in losses. So that's the economic case of resilience that is coming from our research. In the first 5 years, leading through 2018, we invested about 40 million Swiss francs and worked with 5 partners from humanitarian, development, academic, and private sectors, supporting and testing and learning, with 100 communities in 9 countries. We impacted people through a variety of interventions along the way, and we've learned in that exercise that actually resilience building and community development are 2 sides of the same coin, reinforcing each other. We have developed unique programming approach, investing in work that helps community identifying their strengths and weaknesses, and so implement tailored bespoke interventions which build resilience. This is driven through a data analysis tool we call the flood resilience measurement for communities, the FRMC approach, which also provides a mechanism for measuring the building blocks of resilience and so evaluating those interventions. We are expanding the toolkit to include, in addition to floodings, heat waves and wildfires too. In our second phase, that is currently going on until 2024, we focus on expanding our work at a community level, working with 300 communities, this time over 21 countries, including 6 in Africa, as well as looking at ways to scale impact through national and also through global advocacy programs, right? And we are investing yet in that phase another 40 million Swiss francs to do that. And as we continue our development of the work, we're increasingly looking at ways to scale our impact and widen the work, moving from rural environments predominantly to urban environments. That's one way we look at it. Moving away from a pure focus on flood only to multiple hazards, which is often the case in urban context. And also moving away from a focus on global north to really focus on a global program in global south, to a global program including the north. And we are, together with partners ramping up, urban programs in 10 countries, including in the US. And that's a connection also with RCN and the RCI-Fund, for example. And I'll pause here for the question.
Thank you so much for that. And that's really interesting. And it's nice to hear the focus of your work and then also sort of hear how you're growing and expanding it. Really, really thoughtful. Oswald, on to you. Tell us more about the African Development Bank's priorities for water resilience.
Yes, no, thank you. Thank you very much. And indeed, thank you very much for setting the scene from the fund managers and the 2 leaders of cities, Kigali, where we have quite a lot of interesting work we have supported, and also Cape Town. We are keenly following what is happening there. I think the scene has been set. We know the gloomy situation, particularly on the continent of Africa, but also globally. And for us at the African Development Bank, I think we try and look at water resilience building a little more holistically. We're looking not just at the existing water supply systems, governance, and financial models, but we're also looking at the issues of demand. I've been quite happy with what is being done both in Kigali and Cape Town. But to be a lot more specific, I think the need for more resources is being made very, very clear. And for us at the African Development Bank, we want to increase preparedness, which focuses on project preparation. We want to see that the projects that are prepared mainstream climate change resilience, because that's where the solutions begin from, that there has been consultations, that there has been the inputs of the many actors on the ground. We see that there's a lot that is going on. And so, yes, at the end of the day, we want to see that the countries have increased availability of fresh water. There is improved quality and access to water, but also mitigating the extremes, the risks of the extreme floods, droughts, and securing concessional climate finance for the countries. So in a nutshell, we are saying, as African Development Bank, we want to strengthen water resilience by strengthening water governance, institutional support, strengthening the capacities, but we're also looking at upscaling the big water infrastructure. This is required, this is important in building that resilience, but decentralization becomes very, very critical. And the water and sanitation solutions, I was very happy to hear reference to the importance and the role that waste management, both solid waste and wastewater management, is going to play in building this water resilience in the cities, because one needs to appreciate the huge volumes of water that is just left to go into the natural environment. If we put in a little bit of resources, we can recover some resources from there and recover water that can be reused. So that is quite very exciting to us. The natural-based solutions, to manage water and build resilience is very much part of the equation and the solutions that we are advocating among the countries on the continent. So with this, we come with a number of instruments in supporting this. We can give guarantees, we can provide concessional financing, and we are strongly looking to partnerships with other, not just financing institutions, but other agencies, other trust funds that are working on the continent, because we see that there are solutions, there are aspects of the interventions that are very important, that they are bringing to bear, and that make a huge difference in strengthening water resilience on the continent. So in a nutshell, these are some of the elements that we are looking at, but we can go in details maybe at a different time. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. It's a very thorough, comprehensive approach that the bank is taking, and I think that's really important and thoughtful, and yeah, a good food for thought and for us to keep considering. So having heard what both of your organizational priorities for investment are, and then thinking back on again the two previous panels we've heard, where we've heard about financial instruments or funds, vehicles that are now available and in operation, and then also what real needs and practices are being implemented across a few cities on the African continent. What would be your advice on how to fill these gaps for these initiatives as well as for the cities? Connecting some of these dots, putting these pieces together. How do you think you could support in securing some of these investments and also scaling them up? I guess this time, Oswald, I'll actually go to you first, pick on you first.
All right, thank you very much. I think quite a lot has been said, but I think we'll be a little bit more specific to look at what can the African Development Bank do, or what is the African Development Bank doing to help fill these gaps. I think the question of innovation, the question of creativity in coming up with financing mechanism cannot be overemphasized. And we're saying that we have both the franchise value, at least on the African continent, we have the experience to work and support these cities in finding these solutions. I did make reference to securing of climate finance, concessional climate finance from the various agencies that are financing or are making resources available for climate change. As an implementing agency, we are able to secure, in many cases, grants on behalf of cities to help in building resilience in the financing in the water sector. So I think partnering with us, working with us, we are able not only to bring financial resources, we are able to bring other partnerships that bring technologies, that bring financing to the table so that we can meet that gap. We can provide, if there are resources available in country, we can provide guarantees that de-risk some of those borrowers and make the local resources available to the users, because we need all these resources in filling that gap. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, I think you said it brilliantly. Gregory, over to you then. What about your perspective on filling some of these gaps for these cities?
Yeah, so I think for me it starts with what investors usually look at as prerequisite for engagement, right? And if I look at from our perspective, we really it all starts with what's the impact, right? We can talk about doing good for society, and we, from a foundation perspective, we want to see how much it is impacting people, right? That's all KPI, but their investors are using different set of KPIs. So I think whatever the project and the appetite is, I think it all starts from how do we measure impact of what we do, and making sure that our investments are put at work in a wisely way, right? That's the first prerequisite. I think the second prerequisite, and both are correlated, right, is really what's the level of interest and appetite at local level, at community level, at city authority level, right? We just heard from two of these cities with high energy and high belief and convictions about the value of building resilience. I mean, that's for us a big prerequisite, because the needs are so big out there around the world that we could deploy most of our resources in 1,000 ways, and I think we want to make sure that we help ourselves in selecting those areas that are really willing to engage and really willing to commit resources together with us to make it work and to make it successful, right? So these are fundamental elements. To do that, we usually do that proactively, and this is also where organizations like RCN kicks in to help us understand what is this level of local appetite and readiness to work. But we also respond to in a more reactive way, right? So for cities that are interested and willing to do something and that may not be part of our radar screen, how we're very happy to talk to these urban centers and offering our tools and expertise so that they can then use the insights of this work and engage with organizations like Catherine and the RCI-Fund to apply for funding and investment, right? So, it's both proactive and reactive, but it all starts from, what is the impact, how do we measure it, and what's the level of appetite and engagement locally to make it work.
Thanks. And I think that was a really nice component to bring in there, sort of the measurement and how do we, and also really understanding the appetite and sort of the difference between, you need both, right? You need the proactive and thinking ahead and planning and strategizing, which I think Osbert really emphasized, but then you also need the reactive, the people who, well, we have this problem and now we need to solve it and coming forward. So I think that we need the two directions to really, yeah. So I wish we could keep talking, but we are really tight on time. But thank you, both of you, so much for your contributions. And I hope you do also input into the Pathable chat some of your contact information for those people who, would really like to reach out to you now knowing that option exists, right? So thank you so much for speaking with me and sharing your organizational priorities and perspectives. With that, I'm actually going to shift gears a teeny bit. I get to hold on to the floor, but so we've heard from a number of decision makers and leaders who are really directing and guiding progress today. But, if we're looking forward, we also have to think about who are those people going to be in the next couple of years, right? Or the next, so looking at the next generation. So we did want to bring forward to share some of the youth and emerging leader perspectives. And with that, it's very much my pleasure to introduce Benin Ishimwe Mugenweza. And Benin, I actually is a young water professional with a deep interest in the science policy interface of environmental sustainability. She is an MSc in water policy and a BSc in civil engineering. Now, Benin also has been serving as the executive secretary of Global Water Partnership Rwanda, and she's also the Rwanda coordinator for the Global Water Leadership Program, in which case I get to work with her on a very regular basis, and it is an extreme pleasure. She also is an active member of the Rwanda Young Water Professionals, and some of her other, outside of all of these things, some of her other water-related projects of late have included the Rwanda Wash Finance Strategy, as well as the Urban Water Resilience Project. So Benin, it's an absolute pleasure to be sharing the screen with you right now. And I really wanted to hear from your perspective about the role of youth in the water sector and how youth can be more supported through different types of investments in water entrepreneurship, as well as capacity training or anything else. Please do share.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie, for introducing me, and thank you for the organizers to invite me to this session. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm proud to be representing the youth here in very fruitful conversations. So yeah, it's no doubt that young people have the potential to be effective agents of change. But we know that while many youth initiatives may exist around the world, overall, I would say that we still lack structured and meaningful involvement of youth. And this is mainly due to various reasons, including the lack of widespread support and the absence of proper platforms that sustain youth participation. Now, when we talk about structured involvement of youth, it's something that I've experienced in my personal professional growth, and it's something very possible. Giving the example of the Rwanda Young Water Professionals, which is a youth-led organization composed of senior and junior water professionals. And it also has an affiliated university club for students to be involved as well. So the platform gives opportunity for young water professionals to receive career guidance, share knowledge, and when with the capacity that they have, they can also develop and implement water projects, and at large support actually the water sector in Rwanda. So this organization has been contributing to many projects in Rwanda, including the Urban Water Resilience project in the Musanze city of Rwanda. And actually it shows that if there is the youth is involved, it's very possible for them to contribute and to participate. So we need more of these platforms, because if you think about it, not engaging the youth in these matters is an opportunity wasted in terms of dealing with water challenges in our countries and regions. Young people in the sector, they have the knowledge, they have the time mostly, and they have the passion, but their engagement is still not consistent, and sometimes limited to maybe inviting youth representatives to participate in events. So there's so many ways that the youth can be involved. And we have talked about in these sessions, innovation came through, and we cannot also forget to talk about entrepreneurship. Like we know that today's young people are more entrepreneurial than ever. Even the data actually backs it up. It says that the youth start twice as many businesses as the older generation. And talking from the experience of the East African region, we have seen a more young entrepreneurs actually bringing innovative solutions in the water sector, for example, providing safe water to their communities. So now imagine if more they had better access to finance, better access to capacity training, what will be accomplished in this context. Now, talking about capacity training, the youth needs as much as possible to be trained, especially on the new range of skill sets required to solve future water-related problems. So as we talk about water shocks that the world will face tomorrow, one key solution can be to prepare and train the people of tomorrow to deal with these issues. So that says more innovation hubs that involve the youth, more opportunities for occupational trainings are needed to help us as young water professionals to get exposed to the existing technologies. Because, you know, like when you look at what already exists and see the gaps, with an innovative mindset, that's actually how better solutions are created. But it's very hard to actually do that if you don't have that exposure. Now, lastly, talking about the decision-making level. Yes, capacity building is important, and access to investments is also very important to enable youth engagement. But it's also very imperative to make space for youth-owned initiatives to actively engage society on a policy level and in the decision-making process. Their valuable contribution is needed, and decision makers should really invest in enabling environment to strengthen the participation of youth, because this is very encouraging towards us and actually very motivating to keep contributing, keep participating, and be able to actually be up for the future challenges that we are already anticipating. Leslie, I hope I used the time you gave me right. Thank you so much.
Oh. No, thank you so much. Yeah, that was brilliant and wonderful, as I knew it would be. Thank you so much for sharing and highlighting these really important points for us all to consider about how to make sure that youth and the emerging leaders are really incorporated into decision-making and activities so that we can ensure everything we do now is actually sustainable and even better in the future. So thank you for that, Benin. And with that, I have to turn things back over to Rohier for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Leslie. And we only have a very, very little time left on the clock, so I have to be brief, and that's unfortunate. What I see happening here, and I'm really excited that this was not a presentation pro forma for the World Water Week, and I hope everybody got a sense how this community is kind of really converging, bringing initiatives together, working closely with the cities and the financial community to kind of really get to a point in which we can get to action in cities. I think that's very important. And looking ahead with the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh in November, I really see this as an important moment to, as a community, as a group of partners, and thanks for the partnership, thanks to all of you for being so collaborative in spirit. We should move there and be part and be clearly identified as an important contributor, urban water resilience, cities as an important contributor to the waters initiatives that is currently being prepared by the COP27 presidency. And I also see, this opportunity where we create that partnership, where we create that coordination and that close work together with the cities at the center. I think there's a lot to win. And I'm getting really optimistic on where we are here together. Thank you so much. Thanks for the partners for being here. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Thanks for the cities. I think we brought it all together. I'm looking forward to move into action with all of you and with others. Thank you very much.